Welcome to the Women Leaders Association podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. Be sure to tune in each week to hear an empowering message from the world's top women executives, trailblazers, entrepreneurs, and all-around fierce female leaders. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I will be taking you on a deep dive of each message to equip you with the principles, strategies, and tools you need to start crushing your goals, increasing your impact, creating work-life harmony, and did I mention have more fun? Because when you love what you do it better. The Women Leaders Association is the world's largest women executives association with over 30,000 women in executive and leadership positions who are committed to the development and advancement of women in the corporate arena. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association chapter, would enjoy daily podcasts, or you desire to become a part of the Women's Mastermind group near you, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com. Now let's tune in for this incredible message. Denise, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julianne, for allowing me some time to talk with you.
Yeah. So start off and tell us how you got into this position that you're in now in the energy business, and like what prompted you to go that route?
Okay, so very briefly, going back about 15 years, I decided, even though I was fairly late in my career, that I needed some additional emphasis on oil and gas energy. And so in Australia, I decided that, Houston would be a good place to try to land. I managed that, and I've been here ever since. I've worked in oil and gas organizations. And then probably when COVID hit, I decided I was going to start off my own business. And then at the same time, I was invited onto the board of Lean In Network Energy. And my business is equity in leadership. So there's a lot of, confluence of ideas that, go into that. And then for my sins, as I always tell people, they thought that I might make a good president, and I was elected to president of Lean In Network Energy. And to add to the story, the third piece of that is that I'm also doing my PhD. I'm in my final year of also looking at a topic related to women and men in their executive careers, and the differences and how that relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And so all three aspects of my life all work together, and Lean In Network Energy is specifically related to energy because of some of the work that I've done in organizational development and leadership development in energy. And so it's really just, it's been that interest. And because women in energy are probably one of the most, at least, advanced in terms of numbers of women on boards, number of women getting to executive positions, I think it's a really good time and place to spend my time.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you finding as you're not only doing the research for your PhD, but like you're living it out in real life? Like, what are you finding is the big difference that's happening right now between men and women in this field?
Well, I think, we've been intending to change the face of difference. We've been trying to work on diversity for the last 50 odd years. And really the needle hasn't moved incredibly well or much in the last 50 years. And so one of the things that I think we've attempted to do is we've attempted to really work on training. And training, you can't train diversity. You can't train people to understand difference. And so it's got to be around, inviting people into the conversation, and also inviting people into the organizations who, leaders, etc., who really are interested in what this diversity peace brings.
Mhm.
And so I think that the real difference, and I'm sorry to keep using the word difference, but the real difference between the experiences of men and women is that, the structural, systemic or system environment that women find themselves in is very male oriented.
Yeah.
And so it's been formed for men. And so to try to overlay that with some sort of, diversity training is just not going to work. And we know that it's not working. That's what the research has already shown us.
Yeah.
And that's what the results are showing us. So it's really about how do we change the system? How do we change the structures so that there's equity for everyone in the workplaces of now?
Yeah. Man, I'm thinking like just the imagery that was coming to my mind when you were talking about that was like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Like
Yes,
it's just
yes.
not going to cut it.
Right. Well, that's a very Texas, I think, illusion that we're using there, and I'm right in the right place for that. So yeah,
Absolutely.
no, you're right.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is working? What are you finding is that people are beginning to open up to in bringing more diversity in and starting from, kind of the ground up and then from the top down, like it has to be this flow, right? It can't just be like, oh, we're going to take this section, of human resources and just focus on them, right? Like it's not just their job.
Well, I think you talked just then. You mentioned the human resources,
Yeah.
and I think one of the really critical issues that we have faced and that we're still facing is that if we abrogate our responsibility at the leadership level and at the board level, in terms of that that executives really hand it over to human resources
Mm-hmm.
to undertake diversity training or diversity change or transformation or whatever name you want to call it.
Right.
It hasn't worked and it's not going to work. Human resources did a really good job years ago of introducing the concept to to the business world and saying this is something that's really valuable. Greater diversity adds innovation, it adds greater profitability. You've got better performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where it basically finished because there's this huge research to performance gap. So we really need to understand what works and what doesn't work. So as you've asked, what does work is understanding, and we've got lots of data on what actually works. And we know, for example, that training doesn't work. We know that it often creates, when you train and you force people into mandatory programs, which so many companies still are checking the box on, then what happens there is that you have a whole lot of what they call, and I'm not meaning to use a technical term, but it's an important term that we've got to understand, and that's cognitive dissonance. In other words, there's a difference between what is being said and what is actually being enacted in the organization.
Right.
And why that happens is because you have a whole bunch of leaders who are being forced into this diversity training, and it can be a form of development training. It doesn't even have to be mandatory training. It can be training that is part of the norm of the development, but they're being required to attend. And straight away they're saying, but why me? Why am I being selected as someone who doesn't understand this stuff? And so you have this real dissonance in the organization because people are saying, I don't want to be a part of this. As opposed to, and what has been shown to work is inviting people into the conversation. Make them a part, and this is an old adage, make people a part of this, a part of the solution. Don't make them the cause of the problem and then try to rectify it.
That's right.
So that does work. And also it's combinations of things that work. So if you have someone who is actually in charge, and it doesn't have to, it's not HR, but someone who is really an exponent of diversity. You create a staff position And then you also link that to a mentoring program. Both evolve into something more meaningful for the organization. And I've done some work on that, and I've done some presentations which I actually identify what works and what doesn't work. But that key is about inviting people in to the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm thinking about I have 6 children, and they're in, middle school all the way down to primary school. And just, I mean, it goes so far. People think, oh, well, let's just start it here in the workplace. No, no, no. We got to go way back down the line, and I think our whole education system is somewhat broken in the fact that, we're teaching kids don't work together. Look, there's only one way to solve a problem. And, this is, you have to follow it this way, and you have to do these steps. And it's like, that's so opposite of what we're trying to say we're creating in the workforce, because we know that's what's going to work best and making society, more inclusive and better way to get our message out and to help the world be better.
Absolutely.
So far back.
No, and I think a lot of what we talk about from a diversity perspective, or equity or inclusion, is really about how we can work together. And there's no prescription, but we've got to. I'm sorry, I keep thinking about the fact that you have 6 children, and oh gosh, I wish when I had my 2, many years ago, I wish I looked like you. I never ever did. So kudos to you for that ability. But sorry, so I'll refocus now. But what I was going to say is that teamwork is essential. But unless people are included, unless you have a framework and a kind of an environment, an ecosystem, as we're calling it now, unless you have something that really enables people to work together. So, feeling included, being included, belonging to the organization is the only way that you're going to create equity. And it's not just about at the start where you have a diverse population, or you have a diverse recruitment into the organization. Right. It goes much beyond that, and that is the culture that is created by leaders. It's the culture that's created by parents at home. It's the culture that's created in the classroom. And so it's really imperative that we really start as human beings to adopt this value system that really engages with how do we truly include people? Right. How do we truly make sure that people feel that they belong, including that I feel that I belong. And for many women, and of course that's my area, for many women in the workplace, they still feel very excluded. Because when you talk about having power, the power of the male in organizations is such that if you don't have power, you don't have access. If you don't have access, and if you don't have the ability to feel safe, for example, then you can't have inclusion, and you can't have equity, because you do need a safe place to fall. And that's why psychological safety in organizations has become so important for women, and so important for the organization to be successful in providing these inclusive types of places that people can work.
That's so right on point. What piece of advice would you give to the woman who, maybe was hired as a checkbox, right? Like, oh, check, we got the girl in.
Right.
What piece of advice would you offer to her as to, like, if she's in this industry that she really wants to be in, and she knows she's skilled, she's capable, all of those things, and she thought that, okay, yes, I've been hired. They see the brilliance, they see the greatness, and this is my opportunity to really shine. And that's not been her experience because of, like, what you've been talking about. What advice would you give to her?
That's a great question, because I think sometimes your natural instinct when you're in those situations is sometimes to close in and close down.
Mm.
And I think we've got to be real careful that well, first of all, we have to understand that we probably have to work twice as hard, three times as hard in terms of proving ourselves. And women know this. We've often felt this.
Right.
And there will be detractors who say, well, that's not the case. You need to be, you just need to be, hardworking. But the thing is, what I think is important, what research shows, what a lot of the good development books for women actually show, is that yes, you have to work hard, but you have to do some other things while you're working hard to prove yourself. That you weren't just a check the box, you weren't just a token. And so what you have to do is, find some of those, if not sponsors, then those allies in those positions of power, in those, and they typically an ally is not necessarily someone who's from your same group. So
Okay.
often it will be a male. And so one of the things that I often say to people is that one of the things that often works against women is that in organizations where you may have a couple of women who are really quite senior, you might find that from some of the work that I've done, the research that I've done, it's become very apparent to me that you can have you talk about patriarchy, and we often think of it being patriarchal men. Well, there's often also patriarchal women.
Mm.
So don't sow your seed with women who aren't going to help pull you up. Find
You're
those
so on point with that. You're so on point with that.
find if not a woman, and very often it won't be, it'll be a man. I've had so many women who say to me, the men have been the greatest joy of my life, Denise. They're the ones who really helped me. They've given me a foot up, or opened the door or whatever. So we've got to become really good at not just working at our jobs, but working at our careers.
Yeah.
And that's something that that often gets lost in the mix. So really work on networking within the organization and outside. Men do it, and they do it brilliantly, but women can sustain relationships much better. So
Yeah.
I really would suggest that go and find someone who's got a good visibility in the organization. Take them on as your sponsor, or invite them to coffee or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
so that you become known. And when they're thinking of someone who could do something that's perhaps not in the ordinary vein of the job that you do,
Right.
because you should be thinking about your next job while you're doing the job that you're doing, because you obviously can do that.
Right.
And the other thing that I also say to women is, and we know this also from the research, is women will only apply or think that they can do a job if they have 80-90% of the traits or the behaviors or the skills. And
Men
so
are
we say,
like, I have
oh,
10%. That job is mine.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's really it's imperative that women start changing how they see themselves.
Yeah.
And really understand that if they're there for a career, then act as if you're there for a career.
Yeah.
Don't act as if you're just doing a job, because we like to think, and this really applies to your question as well. We think if we do a really good job and we're outstanding, people are going to say, wow, gosh, we're glad that we took her on, and she's fantastic. And that no, necessarily is not going to happen all the time, or even some of the time. So you do have to be really structured and constructed in how you go about yourself and your job. And women feel very uncomfortable with that. Sorry, not your job, your career, because they feel that they're not being authentic.
Right. They feel
Well,
they're
there are
being
many.
manipulative.
Yes, and really, that's got nothing to do with it. There's some research that actually shows that it's not about being selfish. You have to be very self-conscious
Yeah.
about how you go about it. And being self-conscious is very different to being selfish in how you go about really promoting yourself, etc. And I think women are certainly getting better at it, but I think it's really about thinking about your career in a very, as I said, constructed and a very defined way.
Yeah. Back to the point about women feel bad about it. I think that right now we are seeing an unparalleled identity crisis. I mean, that our world's never seen before, in the fact that, we tend to wear all these different masks. When I'm out at work or my job or my career, I show up this way, right? Like, these are the rules I have to follow. This is the compartment that I'm living in. These are the rules. And then when I go home, I'm going to take that mask off and I'm going to put on the mommy mask or the wife mask or, whatever. And then, so we have all these like different roles that we're fulfilling, when the truth is we need to embrace all of who we are and show up in that manner. Like the laughter and silliness and adventure that I get to experience with my kids. Like, when I realized bringing that into my leadership, that changed everything. It allowed me to see people differently, to love people differently, because I was getting to show up as my most full, authentic self. And like, that's where our power lies. It's not being manipulative. Like, we have to change that perspective. And it's like, no, we want you to embrace all of who you are, all of your genius. That's what you need to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that aspect is really powerful, because who we are. I mean, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, plus all the other,
Right.
family related things. But I'm also very committed to this work that I do in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm really committed to my study. So I'm multifaceted,
Yeah.
and I think that is being authentic.
Yeah.
It's not being like I've got one face that I wear at work. And I have to say, one of the in one of my research pieces that I've done for my PhD, one of the pieces is talking to women and men about things that have occurred in their lives around their jobs. And one thing, for example, that I was a relatively young woman, well, younger than me. Most people seem to be younger than me these days. But she's a young mother, and she is now in a very senior role in an organization at the executive leadership level. But she said while she was in previous roles, she looked at the way, for example, that men accepted positions, so that when they were offered a job, either a new job into the company or a job within the company, they would often never accept the initial job offer. And she watched this over a number of years, and she said, "I'm going to take note of that." So what she started to do was, when she went for more senior roles, she just automatically said, "I am not going to accept that," and she rejected it. Now, huge risk, but even bigger reward. And many of us aren't prepared to do that, because we're so concerned about, if we do that, they may not offer us any more money. We may lose the job altogether. And I think that as contrary as that is, we still have to. This is where that whole authenticity, and you bring your whole person, your whole game to to what you're doing. And for her, it actually worked. Now, I'm not going to. There could have been occasions where it may not have worked, but the other thing that she also told, and this is about being authentic, and I think it's really a valuable piece of the story, is that she used to do some horrible things, like she'd if there was a late meeting, she'd race home make sure the kids were fed, and whatever, give them a kiss on the head, and the husband would put them to bed, and not being derogatory to any male as a husband, with there are many, many good men out there. But she felt that this is that piece, isn't it? About, I'm also a mother. So I am at work. I've got to go home and do this. She raced home. She'd come back to work and she'd throw an all-nighter. And she said, I'm not going to do that anymore. She said, because I have my job, but it's not, 100% of my time. I'm also a mother. And she, at 5:30 or whatever the time is, no excuses, which so many of us do. Oh, sorry, I've got to go. My husband can't pick up my mum can't pick up my child. She just stands up. Okay, I'm out of here. Catch up with this discussion. Let me know how it lands. Yeah. And she's out of there. Yeah. And I think it takes a lot to do that, but that to me is actually being authentic, because that's being true to who you are. Being authentic doesn't mean just sitting there and thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to pay another $100 because I don't have my, I'm going to be late picking up the kids, or whatever it is. That's not authentic.
Right.
That's not being true to yourself, and that's not being the self that you should be bringing to work.
That's right.
It's hard, but it is about this time of change. Yeah. That if we can't do it now, if we can't do it up post-pandemic with remote work and everything else, when are we going to be able to do it?
That's right.
Because there's no time like the present, and we've never had times like this.
Man, you're so on point, man. And I think about the times when I was opening my companies, and I would have that guilt of like, oh, I've got to go, or oh, I can't. And then I would stay feeling guilty about my children, having to ask somebody else to go pick them up or whatever. And meanwhile, I'm still like trying to perform my duties at work, and like my mind's not there. Yes. It would have been better just to be like, okay, bye. I'll get back to it when I get back to it. And I think it's important for women especially to realize in every area of their life, in every area that they have relationships, the importance of boundaries. It is to protect what you honor and love and trust most. And people who are offended by your boundaries, it's just because it inconveniences them. And not to let that seep in, because you're doing what is right for you and your family, and what you've come up and said, you know what, this is my line.
Yeah, no, that you make an excellent point. And one thing that you can add to that conversation is the fact that there's been a lot of talk about this on LinkedIn and other social media, blogs, etc. Because there have been some studies that have been done on burnout, and one of the interesting articles that has come out of this is the fact that burnout of women is in such proportions that it really highlights the fact that there is inequity in the workplace. And because women are suffering it more than men. And the reason, that's not to say that men aren't, but the reason that women are is because of the fact that they've got their jobs, and because there's so much remote work going on, because there's the opportunity for hybrid work, and women still have post-pandemic the issues of childcare, the issues of parent care, or family-related stuff, that they're actually doing it hard, and burnout is in incredible proportions for women. So so it's actually defining our inequality, or the lack of inequity in how organizations are dealing with us. And so that's a very important piece of what you're talking about establishing boundaries, because unless we don't establish boundaries, and unless the systems and the structures in which we work don't provide for those boundaries, then we're always going to have this issue. So it really is about creating enough noise that we make those changes.
That's right. That's so true. Denise, thank you so much. This has been such a great and needed conversation. And how are ways that people can connect with you if they want to discuss this further, or just, work with you in some way, or I know you know, are in charge of a nonprofit. How can people contribute? How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, well, you'll find me. You'll find Lean In Network Energy on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anything that there's social media.
All the platforms.
All of the platforms. You can find me on LinkedIn to connect with me. Also, you can find me through Denise at denismannix.com or president at leaниnenergy.org. And so there's many ways in this day of social media. If you can't find me or can't find Lean In
Google
Network
her.
Energy,
You'll find me somewhere.
You'll find me somewhere. But the important thing is, yes, we are a global nonprofit. We need lots of people to help us in terms of the work that we do. We're looking for volunteers who actually work, who don't want to just put the title on their resume. Okay, we're not a resume funding process. Yeah. So if you want to work, please look us up, because we're doing some really interesting things, including, I might add, we've been contacted by Bloomberg TV, and they're doing a segment on Lean In Network Energy this year in terms of our work in the area of diversity. That's going to be shown on Advancements with Ted Danson. So if you want to be part of an organisation that's making some noise and making a difference for difference, then this is certainly something that we're doing. And if you want to find out a bit more about some of the work that I'm doing in terms of research, etc., because it'll be delivered next year, my thesis, etc., and it'll be really a very interesting outcome for all of that. So thank you for this opportunity, Julianne. I'm still dumbfounded by the fact that you have six children, which I think
Me too, it's fine.
But no, and you know what I think? I think that you are a prime example of how to do it, not because you've got 6 children, whether you had 1 or you had 0. It's about you being you. And I think that's what we bring to the table, and that's what the world has to value. So thanks for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Denise. Listen, we will drop some of her links in the show notes that you can connect with her there. Also, you can always Google her and find all the other places that she is. We are so excited. Thank you, Denise. We appreciate your time. And remember, if you are looking on how to connect further with the Women Leaders Association or find a chapter near you, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com and connect with us there. Bye for now, my friends.